I couldn't bark anymore, couldn't run, couldn't fight. But I remember, clear as yesterday, the way he looked at me, like a ghost had come home. No one knew who I was, just another stray with bones poking through. But I had once been a soldier, and now I've come back to tell the story no one was ever supposed to hear. I still remember the way the desert wind felt against my fur that morning. Dry, restless, full of warning. The kind of wind that carries more than sand. It carries the sound of what's coming. Back then, I was still whole, still fast, still wearing my vest like a second skin, ears alert, muscles ready. Back then, I was Sergeant Cole Bennett's dog. His shadow, his shield, his only constant in the chaos. We were stationed outside a dusty village in northern Syria, just the two of us and a small special ops unit. I'd trained for years for that kind of mission. Mine detection, perimeter sweeps, scent alerts. But no amount of training ever prepares you for the way death smells when it's close. You don't forget that smell. It clings to your nose and settles behind your eyes. That morning, we got the call. A possible weapons stash buried beneath a collapsed school. I took point, like always. Cole's voice was calm in my ear as he walked behind me, but I could hear the tension under it. Easy, Rex. Take it slow. He always spoke like that, low and steady. Not commanding, just believing. Believing I'd know what to do. Believing I'd keep him safe. I caught the scent of oil and metal under the rubble, faint but sharp. My tail stiffened. I froze, ears forward, paw raised. That was our signal. Cole stopped instantly. He trusted me with his life, and I trusted him with mine. But that day, something went wrong. A second device was hidden deeper than I could detect. When it blew, it wasn't near me. It was behind us. Close enough to throw Cole into the dirt, far enough not to kill, but close enough to injure. I turned and saw him sprawled on the ground, blood darkening the sleeve of his uniform. I remember running to him, not hesitating, not checking for safety, just running. I stood over him, barking, ears pinned, heart hammering. I wasn't barking at enemies. I was barking at the sky, at the ground, at the universe itself. Not him. Take me instead. He looked up at me through the dust, his mouth trying to form words. Good boy, I think he whispered. Or maybe I just wanted to hear that. It's hard to say now. They airlifted us out, but not together. I don't remember much after that. Men in clean uniforms, cold steel tables, needles, a new collar. They said things like transfer and off rotation. I stopped seeing Cole's face. I stopped hearing his voice. They took off my vest, shaved my belly, tagged my ear. And then, one morning, I was loaded into the back of a transport van, crate rattling with each bump in the road. The humans didn't say where we were going. They didn't say why he hadn't come. No one said anything. I waited, though. Every night I curled into myself and waited for Cole to appear. I thought he must be coming. He had to be. We didn't say goodbye. But he never came. The place they took me to, Nova Shield Facility, isn't a place I want to remember. It smelled like bleach and fear, metal cages, echoing barks, eyes that didn't blink anymore. Dogs like me, with medals buried in their muscle memory, reduced to silence. No one looked at us like partners there. We were files, numbers. Some got called into rooms and never came back. Others just disappeared. I started forgetting what hope tasted like. Then one day, someone forgot to latch my cage. I waited a beat, long enough to be sure. Then I pushed. The gate creaked open like a door I wasn't supposed to find. I ran. Out the hallway, through the loading dock, past the fence that had a hole in the corner. They never came after me. I wandered. I don't know for how long. Cities blurred into highways, alleys and shelters that turned me away. Humans stopped seeing a soldier. They saw a stray, a mutt, a problem. Until I met Earl. He found me curled beneath a dumpster in Havenport, Oregon. He didn't flinch when I growled. He just sat a few feet away, tore his sandwich in half, and slid a piece toward me. He said, "You can bite me if you need to, but I ain't got much blood left to spare." I didn't bite him. He named me Shadow. Earl didn't have a home. Not really. But he gave me a space beside him. We slept behind libraries, under bridges, in parks, where the grass grew patchy. When winter came, he gave me his coat. When my paws bled, he wrapped them in socks. When I growled in my sleep, he stroked my ears until I settled. But even then, even in the safety of Earl's soft humming and stale coffee breath, I still dreamed of Cole, of his voice, of that morning in Syria when I thought we'd never part. I wondered if he even remembered me, if he thought I had died, because part of me had. Then came the afternoon in Havenport Park. The sun was lazy that day, the kind that drips gold on everything like spilled honey. Earl and I were resting near a bench. I was dozing, half alert. That's when I smelled it. Gunpowder, sand, leather, and sweat. A memory, not a scent, but it was his. My eyes opened, and I saw him. Cole. He was older, scar on his jaw, new lines under his eyes. But those eyes, they were the same, sharp and gentle, full of storms and sunlight. He stopped walking, just stared. "Rex," he whispered. My ears twitched. My body didn't know whether to run or leap. He stepped closer, slow like he was crossing a minefield again. I tried to stand. My legs shook. My chest ached. But I stood, and I looked at him, not as Shadow, as Rex. His eyes filled with water. His voice broke. "Oh God, it's you." I took one step forward. He took two. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe. Maybe he didn't forget me after all. It's a strange thing seeing someone you thought you'd lost forever. Stranger still when they see you, and the whole world goes quiet. That's what happened when Cole said my name, Rex, in the middle of that park, like he was pulling it from the grave. And maybe in some ways, he was. I didn't run to him. I couldn't. My legs weren't what they used to be. The streets had taken a toll, and so had time. My ribs pressed against my skin like they were trying to escape. My fur was patchy, stiff with dust, my breath shallow. But none of that mattered when he knelt in front of me and whispered, "You're really here." I wanted to lean in, to press my head into his chest, like I used to after missions, when the adrenaline wore off and we were just two creatures who had survived something awful together. But I didn't move. Not yet. Earl shifted on the bench beside me. I felt his hand tighten on the frayed leash he'd made out of an old hoodie string. "You know this dog?" he asked, low and suspicious, like a man who had too often watched things he loved get taken from him. Cole looked up at him, eyes still wet. "Yeah, I know him better than I know myself." I saw Earl's jaw clench. He glanced down at me. "He's been mine for a while now. Found him behind a diner, eating cardboard. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just stared at me like he was already gone." I remembered that night. I hadn't cared whether I lived or died. I was hungry, sure, but it was more than that. I was tired. I hadn't heard my name in years. "I don't doubt you helped him," Cole said gently. "I'm grateful for that. But he wasn't always like this. He was trained. He was proud. He saved my life more than once." Earl didn't speak for a moment. The leash trembled slightly in his hand, not from anger, but from something softer, fear maybe, or hesitation. "He don't belong to nobody now," he muttered. "People see a broken dog, they toss a sandwich and keep walking. But I stayed. I kept him warm. He kept me sane." Cole nodded. "I believe you, and I don't want to take him like he's some object. I never got to say goodbye. I thought he died overseas. And when I found out he'd been transferred, there was no record. I tried, God, I tried. But the system, it's broken." Earl looked at me again. His eyes, sunken and rimmed red, searched mine like he was trying to figure out whether I wanted to go with this man or stay with him. And that's the hardest part about being like me, caught between two worlds. One man gave me purpose. The other gave me mercy. I didn't know how to choose. So I did what I used to do when Cole and I trained together back at Fort Brantley. I crouched, slowly, painfully, and placed my nose against his palm. No bark, no wag, just recognition. I felt his breath catch. He whispered, "Hey, buddy. It's okay. I got you." Earl didn't fight. He loosened the makeshift leash, let it drop onto the bench beside him, and stood up slowly. "Name's Earl. I called him Shadow," he said. "Figured it fit, the way he followed me quiet-like." Cole stood and extended a hand. "Cole Bennett. He used to be Rex." Earl didn't shake his hand, but he nodded once. "Just take care of him. That's all I ask." I followed Cole home that day, not because I understood everything, but because something deep inside me stirred. A feeling I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Belonging. His apartment wasn't big, second-floor walk-up, smells of coffee and old leather. There was a photo on a shelf near the TV, him in uniform, and me beside him, ears perked, sand in my fur. I stared at it for a long time until my legs gave out and I slumped to the floor. Cole didn't say much. He laid a folded blanket down near the radiator, placed a bowl of water beside it, then just sat on the edge of the couch, watching me like I might vanish again. "Can't believe it," he said after a while. "I looked for you for years. They told me you were unfit for adoption, that you'd be transferred to a care facility. I believed them. Damn fool that I am." I didn't understand his words, but I knew the tone. Shame, regret. Those things have smells, you know, like rust or burnt rubber. I curled up, resting my head on my paws. He stayed there, silent, until the sun went down. That night I couldn't sleep. The blanket was soft, the room quiet, but every creak of the building made me flinch. I kept expecting the floor to shake, for boots to stomp, for someone to drag me away again. Around midnight, I stood and limped to the couch. Cole was still awake, a file folder in his lap, old documents spread across the cushions. When he saw me, he smiled faintly and patted the floor beside him. I hesitated. Then I laid my head against his foot. That's how I slept, listening to the rhythm of his breath, like I used to when we camped out under the stars, in places where the stars didn't feel real. In the morning, Cole fed me a bowl of soft kibble, soaked in broth. I ate slowly. My stomach wasn't ready for more. He knelt beside me and brushed the fur around my ears. "Still got that scar," he whispered. "Left side, from Kandahar. You remember?" I remembered. Not the pain, but the heat, the smoke, The way his hands had trembled as he held pressure on my ribs and screamed for help over the radio. I'd taken the blast so he wouldn't. Later that day, as he tried to clean the collar Earl had used, something caught his attention. I watched as his fingers paused, then reached into the lining. He pulled out a small metal tag, thin, rectangular, with faded engraving. Cole squinted, then frowned. Asset num 492NX, property of Nova Shield. He turned the tag over. No name, no handler, just numbers. His hands tightened, his jaw set. They tagged you like a damn piece of equipment. I whimpered, sensing the anger rolling off him like heat off blacktop. He looked down at me, eyes softening. I'm sorry, Rex. I should have found you sooner. But it wasn't his fault. I didn't blame him. The ones who made me disappear were the ones with clean shoes and dirty hearts. The ones who filed me under obsolete and never looked back. Cole took the tag, placed it in an envelope, and tucked it into his desk drawer. We're going to get answers, he said. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I believed him. Because when Cole made a promise, he kept it. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was beginning to live again. A few days after Cole brought me home, we went back to that same park. The one where he first saw me again. Where the wind was soft and the trees held on to the last of their golden leaves like they knew winter was waiting behind the hills. I still walked with a limp, slower than I'd ever been, but Cole didn't rush me. He never had. Even when I was young, eager and full of fire, he always let me take the lead. That day was no different. He walked beside me, quiet, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes flicking toward me every few steps, like he was still afraid I might vanish. The grass was damp. Kids were laughing somewhere near the swing sets, their voices rising like birdsong. I didn't mind the noise. Not anymore. After everything I'd heard in my life, screams, gunfire, engines roaring through sand, the sound of a child's laugh was something close to peace. We passed the same bench where Earl had sat. Empty now. Cole slowed. You think he's doing all right? I didn't answer, of course, but I looked around, sniffing the air. No coffee, no smoke, no scent of cheap bread or that old wool coat he used to wrap around my shoulders. Just absence. Cole sat down on the bench and patted the space beside him. I lowered myself carefully, bones creaking, joints groaning. You know, he said, pulling a crumpled brown paper bag from his coat. I used to hate quiet. He tossed me a small piece of chicken from a sandwich. I caught it mid-air. Old habits. I got used to the noise in the field, the whir of the drones, the low rumble of trucks. Even the silence between gunshots had its own kind of sound. He paused, looking up through the branches. But now, sometimes, I think silence is the only place I can still hear you. I didn't understand the words, but I knew the weight in his voice. That kind of sadness has a rhythm. You feel it in your chest, like a second heartbeat. I rested my head on his knee. He didn't speak for a while, just sat there, hand moving slowly over the back of my neck. After some time, a pair of worn boots stepped into my line of sight. I smelled him before I saw him. Earl. Didn't think I'd see you two here again, he said, voice rough but not unkind. Cole looked up. You always come by this time of day? Sometimes. Earl shifted the heavy backpack on his shoulder. Figured it was your turn now. Cole gestured toward the bench. Sit a minute. Earl hesitated, then slowly lowered himself onto the far end of the bench. The wood creaked under his weight. Dog looks better, he said. He's healing, Cole nodded, Takes time. Earl reached into his coat and pulled out a thermos, unscrewed the cap, poured a small stream of coffee onto the ground, watching the steam curl upward. Still doesn't wag his tail, he said after a beat. He will, Cole replied, when he's ready. Earl took a sip and squinted into the distance. I used to talk to him, nights when I couldn't sleep. Just mumbling about stupid stuff, bad dreams, old regrets, how the sky used to look when I was a kid. He looked down at me. He always listened. I met his gaze. For a second, it felt like we were still curled up beneath that overpass, the wind screaming through the concrete above us, his coat over my back. Guess we saved each other, he added. Cole nodded slowly. I think that's what dogs do. We don't talk. We just stay. You're not wrong. Earl sighed. I didn't have a damn thing left before I found him. Didn't think anyone would even notice if I vanished. He looked away, blinking fast. Then he showed up, sat beside me like I was still worth something. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that comes after truth has been spoken. I never tried to rename him, Earl said suddenly. Just called him Shadow 'cause he followed me around, but he never stopped listening when I said it. Cole smiled, faintly. He always answered to love, not just a name. They sat like that for a while, two men and a dog sharing a piece of sky, a patch of grass, and a silence that meant more than words. When Earl finally stood, he looked down at me and reached out. I let him scratch behind my ears. Take care of him, he said to Cole. He's got more soul than most people I've met. I will, Cole promised. As Earl turned to go, he paused, pulled something from his coat pocket, and placed it on the bench. It was an old tennis ball. Faded green, frayed along the seams. Never saw him play with it, he muttered. But he carried it everywhere. Cole picked it up and turned it over in his hand. Thank you, he said. Earl just nodded and walked off, his figure disappearing into the light between the trees. That night, Cole left the ball beside my bed. I stared at it for a long time before closing my eyes. I dreamed of running, of dry grass and the smell of cedar trees, of a young man calling my name and me leaping toward the sound without fear. And for the first time in a long while, I slept without waking. The next morning, Cole sat me down in front of his desk. He opened a folder and took out the metal tag again, the one with the serial number and the words Nova Shield Asset etched into its dull surface. I sent an email to someone, he said. A journalist I used to know. Jenna Caldwell. She's written about military waste, contractor abuses, stuff like that. He turned the tag over in his hand. She responded last night, wants to meet. Says she's heard about Nova Shield before, but never had a name. Never had a dog like you. He looked at me, eyes tired but burning. We're going to find out what happened, Rex. Not just for you. For every dog they sent away and never brought home. I didn't move, but inside I felt something stir. It wasn't rage or vengeance. It was purpose. A scent trail in the air, a lead I could follow, and I knew, whatever came next, I wouldn't face it alone. Jenna Caldwell showed up in a rusted blue pickup with her hair tied back in a crooked bun and a coffee thermos clutched like a weapon. She parked across the street from our building, stepped out without saying a word, and crossed the sidewalk with the kind of stride I'd seen in soldiers, the kind that didn't waste motion, the kind that said she'd seen things and didn't flinch anymore. I watched her through the window. I could smell her before she knocked. Not perfume. No. She wore ink and fatigue and the faint trace of printer toner on her jeans. She had the scent of someone who lived with paper, deadlines, and the uneasy truth that sometimes the truth itself isn't welcome. Cole opened the door and didn't smile, just nodded. "Jenna," he said. "Cole." She stepped inside and crouched, looking at me first thing. Her eyes weren't soft. They were focused, studying me like I was both subject and story. "So this is Rex," she said. "He's quieter than I expected." "He listens more than he speaks," Cole said. I didn't move, didn't blink, but I felt her gaze settle on the scar down my side, the one I earned shielding Cole from shrapnel in a place with no name and no mercy. She stood slowly, unzipping a weathered messenger bag and pulling out a folder thick with clipped articles and printouts. She laid them out on the table. "Nova Shield's name has come up before. Mostly under the radar, contracts, logistical transfers, procurement loopholes. Nothing the public would notice, but this." She tapped the metal tag on the table. "This is something else." Cole picked it up, turning it in his hand. "They listed him as Asset 492NX. No name, no record of retirement or adoption." Jenna nodded. "Exactly. When I cross-checked that number with an old database of surplus transfers, I found a match. It wasn't in the K9 unit records. It was under equipment disposal." Cole's jaw tightened. "They tagged him like broken gear." I rested my chin on my paws, not because I was tired, but because I didn't know where to look. I remembered the cold metal crate, the hallway that echoed with the barks of dogs who would never see sunlight again, the way hands grabbed, not to comfort, but to move, sort, reassign. Jenna sat down, flipping through the pages. "There's more. A handful of reports from former Nova Shield staff. Anonymous, mostly. One said they were ordered to separate non-recoverable units from adoptable ones. Another said some dogs were shipped overseas to work for private security firms without any handler history or medical files. No paper trail. Just crates with serial numbers." Cole leaned forward. "And Rex?" She hesitated. "He wasn't on any of the official exit logs. My guess is someone was supposed to process him for transfer or euthanasia, and didn't. Either a mistake, or someone dropped him off quietly to avoid paperwork. Maybe thought they were doing him a favor. Dumped him to die," Cole muttered. "No," Jenna said, and for the first time, her voice cracked just a little. "To disappear." The room was still. Cole stood up and walked to the window. He stayed there a long time, staring out over the street like he was watching ghosts pass by. I rose, slowly, and walked over. I pressed my head against his thigh. He didn't speak. That night, I lay near the fireplace while they stayed up late, talking in hushed tones, planning, comparing timelines, building something from broken fragments. Cole printed out pictures, photos of me from our deployment, newspaper clippings, fragments of transfer forms with blacked-out lines. He pinned them to the wall, turning our living room into a quiet war room. I watched from the floor, eyes half closed. Not asleep, just listening. The next morning, we went back to the park. It was colder than the last time. Frost clung to the grass. My paws tingled with every step, but I didn't complain. I never had. Cole brought a ball. Not the old, chewed-up one Earl left, but a new one. Clean, bright. A symbol. He knelt beside me, held the ball in his hand. "Want to try?" he asked. I looked at it. Hesitated. My body remembered the motion, the lunge, the chase. But something in me resisted. He didn't push. Just placed the ball on the grass in front of me and sat down beside it. We stayed like that for a long time. People passed. A child pointed. A jogger smiled. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Familiar. Slow. I turned my head. Earl. He shuffled toward us, hands deep in his coat pockets, face lined by wind and worry. Cole stood. "Hey." Earl nodded, eyes landing on me. "He walking better?" "Yeah, a little every day." They stood there, two men who had shared the same dog, and somehow never fought over him. Earl crouched, reaching out to me. I didn't flinch. I leaned forward. "Hey there, Shadow," he said quietly. I licked his fingers, just once. Earl looked up at Cole. "He's not just yours or mine. You know that, right?" "I know," Cole said. Earl stood and turned to leave, then paused. "You both take care now," he said. "The world don't always know what it's lost, but sometimes it gets a second chance." As he walked away, the wind picked up. Leaves stirred. I stepped forward and nudged the ball. It rolled. Cole smiled. That night, he told Jenna about Earl, about the early days, the alley behind the diner, the cardboard, the silence. She took notes, not just with her pen, but with her face, with her silence. The next day, we drove. Miles of highway, flat fields, broken signs. Jenna had tracked down a name. Luis Vega, former logistics manager at Nova Shield, said he might be willing to talk. We met him in a diner that smelled like burnt toast and coffee that had been sitting too long. He was younger than Cole, nervous. He kept checking the windows. When he saw me, his eyes went wide. "Is that the dog?" Cole nodded. "This is Rex." Luis sat down, hands trembling slightly. He looked at me, then at the tag on the table. "I remember that number," he whispered. "It came through my badge." "Your badge?" Jenna asked. Luis swallowed hard. "I processed outgoing assets, stuff being decommissioned. Usually gear, but sometimes dogs." He looked away. "They gave us codes, categories. Some got marked for reassignment, others for discard." "Discard." Cole's voice was sharp. Luis nodded. "It doesn't say it outright, just codes. NX means non-recoverable, not worth the cost to rehabilitate. Most of them never even got logged out properly." "And Rex?" Jenna asked. Luis hesitated. "He was marked NX, but the file was flagged. Someone changed the destination field to undetermined. That never happens." Cole leaned forward. "So what happened?" Luis shrugged helplessly. "I don't know. One day, the crate was gone. No log, no transport receipt. Just gone." He looked at me again. "I thought he was dead." I stared back, not in anger, just in truth. We left the diner in silence. On the way home, Cole didn't speak, but I could feel it in him. The rage, the grief, and underneath it all, something older. A vow. He pulled over on a quiet stretch of road, killed the engine, turned to me. "We're going to bring it all to light, Rex," he said. "Not just for you, for every dog they threw away." I met his eyes, and for the first time since I'd returned to him, I felt something lift, not pain, that would never leave, but doubt, because now we had names. We had proof, And we had each other. The day after we met Luis Vega, Cole didn't speak much. He made coffee like always, but he let it burn a little, let the toast go cold. He just stood at the counter, staring down at that metal tag like it was a piece of a body they'd never buried right. He held it between his fingers for what felt like an hour, said nothing, just breathed slow and hard, like each inhale was fighting to make sense of something that refused to be made right. I lay nearby, head on my paws, watching. I'd seen that look before. In soldiers returning from a firefight. In medics who'd lost more than they saved. It was the face of someone who carried guilt like a second skin. He finally looked at me. "They didn't just forget you," he said quietly. "They filed you away." I didn't understand every word, but I knew what pain sounded like. And this wasn't just pain. It was betrayal, a deep, hollow kind. Jenna came by mid-morning with a new stack of papers and eyes darker than usual. She'd stayed up digging, following trails through databases that weren't supposed to exist anymore. She laid it all out on the table, charts, emails, memos with lines blacked out like the names of the dead. "This goes deeper than just bad record-keeping," she said. "Nova Shield was part of a chain. There are other names, private firms, overseas contractors. Some of these dogs never made it to retirement homes. They were sold, reassigned. Some just vanished." Cole sat down across from her. "We have to make it public." "We're not ready," she warned. "Not yet. We need one more voice." Someone inside. Cole thought for a while. Then he stood up and walked to the bookshelf in the corner. Pulled out an old photo frame, dusty, wood-chipped. Inside it, a younger version of him stood beside another man in desert camo, both squinting into the sun. And between them, another dog. Not me. "That's Jason Miller," Cole said. "Used to run recon with me in Kandahar. His K9, Shadow, was lost in 13. They told him the same thing they told me. Not eligible. No follow-up." "Think he'd talk?" Jenna asked. Cole looked down at me. "If he hasn't already given up hope." We drove that afternoon. Long stretch of highway winding west through the hills. The trees thinned out. The sky opened up. After a while, we pulled into a quiet town with a gas station, a bait shop, and not much else. Jason met us outside a small cafe, his shoulders wide and his face like weathered stone. He didn't smile, didn't shake hands, just looked at me, then at Cole, and nodded once. Inside, the cafe was mostly empty, smelled like old coffee and bacon grease that never quite left the air. We sat in a booth near the window. Jason spoke first. "You found him," he said, voice rough like gravel. "I did," Cole replied. "Barely." Jason looked at me. "What's his name?" "Rex." He gave a slow nod. "Mine was Shadow. You remember him?" "Of course." Jason pulled out his wallet and laid an old photo on the table. Shadow was sitting tall, ears forward, eyes focused on something behind the lens. The way I used to sit, the way we're trained to sit, waiting for the next command that might save a life or end one. "He was with me for 3 years, Jason said. "We cleared more than 40 paths together. I took a bullet in the shoulder during our last run." Shadow dragged me back through a half-collapsed compound. I signed every damn form to bring him home. 2 weeks later, I got an email. Not eligible for individual transfer. That was it. 12 words. He looked up, eyes rimmed red. I saw a video months later from a checkpoint in the Middle East. Civilian contractor security. The dog had no badge, no handler. But I knew him. Same scar on the front leg. Same eyes. Jenna leaned in. Do you still have that video? I saved it, he said. And I've been waiting for someone else to say it out loud. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folder, not just documents, photos, receipts, emails, pages stamped with red letters like confidential and transfer denied. You want proof? Jason said. I've got it. But if you dig too deep, they'll push back. Cole didn't flinch. Let them. I'm serious, Jason warned. They'll come after your job, your name. You might wake up to find your record flagged or your mailbox full of warnings. I've already lost my dog once, Cole said. I'm not losing anyone else. Jason slid the folder across the table. Then you'd better be ready. That night, back at home, Cole laid out Jason's file on the living room floor. I lay beside him, watching as he pieced everything together. He added Jason's reports to the growing collage on the wall. My photo, my serial number, transfer forms, and now Shadow's story too. We're going to make them look, he whispered. No more silence. No more dogs left behind. He glanced down at me. You still with me, old man? I didn't move, but I was. The next morning, we were back in the park. The air was sharper, sky clear and cold. Cole carried a box under his arm. Inside were photocopies, printed photos, a handwritten timeline. He handed it to Jenna. Send this to every outlet that'll read it. Anonymous tip if you have to. She nodded. It's enough for a story. Maybe more. That's when I smelled it. Across the grass, a young girl ran ahead of her mother, chasing a bright red ball that bounced toward the street. Her laughter carried in the wind. I watched, ears twitching. Then I saw the car, black SUV, coming too fast. The ball hit the curb and rolled. The girl followed. Her mother shouted. No one else moved, but I did. I don't remember running. I don't remember pain. Only that, for one moment, I wasn't old. I wasn't limping. I wasn't Rex the discarded dog or Shadow the ghost of the streets. I was a soldier again. I reached her just in time, nudged her back toward the grass, felt the warmth of her tiny body leave my path. Then the SUV clipped me, hard, metal against bone. Asphalt rising like a wave. Everything went dark. When I came to, Cole was above me, his face blurred, his hands trembling as they held my head. You're okay, he said. You did good. You saved her. Just hold on. The girl knelt beside us, tears on her cheeks. She placed a small stuffed bear next to me. For him, she said softly, so he won't be alone. I didn't feel alone. I felt tired, but I also felt proud. Somewhere in the distance, sirens howled. The world kept turning. But in that moment, I knew. I wasn't forgotten anymore, and neither was she. They say dogs don't think in words, only instincts, sense, and muscle memory. But that's not true. Not for dogs like me. We carry something else, something older than commands, older than language. We carry meaning, the kind that doesn't need a name. The moment I saw that little girl chasing her red ball toward the road, I didn't think. I remembered. I remembered the way Cole had fallen that day in the dust, the smell of his blood, the panic that surged through me like wildfire. I remembered that I was trained to go first, to shield, to protect, no matter what. This wasn't a battlefield. But to me, it was the same. The SUV came too fast. The mother screamed too late, and I ran. Old bones be damned. Bad joints be damned. Pain, weight, weakness, all gone. All I knew was the small heartbeat in that child's chest and the line that must not be crossed. I reached her just in time. I nudged her with my shoulder, hard enough to knock her off balance and send her tumbling into the grass. Her doll flew from her hand. I didn't see where it landed, but I saw the SUV. I didn't make it clear. It clipped my back leg, spun me sideways, and the world tilted. The pavement rushed up to meet me. Then everything turned grey. When I opened my eyes, Cole was there. Always Cole. His hands cupped my face, shaking, and his voice cracked. "Rex, no, no, no. Stay with me. Buddy, come on." I tried to move, but I couldn't. My leg screamed in a language of its own. My chest felt hollow. But I saw the girl, safe in her mother's arms, crying, but alive. And that was enough. The little girl slipped from her mother's grip and knelt beside me, still clutching something in her hand. She reached out and placed it next to me, a small, worn, stuffed bear with one ear missing. "For him," she whispered, "so he won't be lonely." I pressed my muzzle against it, weak but certain. I wasn't lonely. Not now. The ambulance came. The driver shouted. A crowd had gathered, phones out, faces shocked. Some whispered, others cried. But I didn't care. Cole lifted me gently, arms trembling as he carried me into the back of the van. His jaw was tight, his eyes wet. "You're not going alone," he said. At the clinic, they rushed me into a room that smelled of rubbing alcohol and quiet dread. I heard Dr. Alvarez's voice, low, calm, the way she always was when things were bad, but she didn't want anyone to panic. "Lay him on the table. Let's get fluids going. I need vitals, now." The lights were too bright. The table was too cold. I tried to lift my head, but my body refused. I could feel myself slipping, like stepping into deep water, further from the surface with each second. But I felt Cole's hand on my chest, warm, steady. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." That night, the clinic was quiet. Dr. Alvarez came back with Jenna beside her. Their faces told me what they didn't say out loud. "He's in heart failure," the doctor said. "Old injuries, untreated, age, stress. The impact didn't help." Jenna closed her eyes. "How long?" "A few weeks, maybe. If he rests, if he doesn't overdo it again." Cole nodded slowly. "That's all I need." He stayed beside me, even after they hooked the IV into my leg, even after the lights dimmed and the machines beeped slow and steady. He never stopped touching me, one hand on my ribs, rising and falling, as if afraid I'd stop breathing the second he let go. "You've done enough, Rex," he whispered. "More than enough. Just rest now." But I couldn't rest yet. Because in my mind I still saw the girl, and her bear, and the way the crowd had gathered, not in fear, but in awe. The video went online within hours. Someone had filmed it, caught the whole thing from the sidewalk. A scrawny old dog pushing a child from the path of a speeding car, getting hit, lying still, then twitching, trying to lift his head to make sure she was okay. That clip traveled faster than any bullet I'd ever outrun. Millions watched. Thousands commented. Who is this dog? Where did he come from? This is what loyalty looks like. Jenna showed Cole the numbers the next morning. It's everywhere. Even the local news picked it up. They want to do a segment. People are calling him a hero. Cole didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, lying there with a bandage wrapped around my leg and my breath short. "He always was," he said softly. "They just didn't see it before." 2 days later, I was allowed to go home. They wrapped me in a blanket and carried me gently to the car. Cole sat with me in the back seat, his arms around me like I was something fragile and precious. Maybe I was. The apartment felt smaller than before, but warmer, familiar, safe. They laid me down in my spot by the fireplace. The stuffed bear was there, waiting. I pressed my nose against it again, and for a moment, everything felt quiet. Right. That night, Cole sat beside me and told stories. Not just about war or duty, but about us. About the time I ate his socks before inspection. About the drill sergeant who said I had too much attitude for a dog. About the night I got spooked by a raccoon and barked so loud I woke the whole barracks. I didn't move, but I listened, because in his voice I heard the life we'd shared, the years, the loyalty, the love. Jenna stopped by the next morning with a strange look on her face. "You need to see this," she said, holding up her phone. On the screen was a photo. Me, lying in the street, dust on my face, eyes open. Beside it, a headline. "Hero dog saves child in Oregon. Turns out he's a forgotten war canine." The story spread like wildfire. More papers picked it up. TV segments ran my story alongside footage of troops and military dogs in combat. People posted old photos of their own canines. Veterans wrote in. Families shared stories of dogs who'd never made it home. And suddenly, I wasn't just Rex anymore. I was a symbol of memory, of what gets lost and what can still be found. That afternoon, Cole sat down next to me, holding a stack of printed emails. His voice shook when he read them out loud. This guy says his K9 disappeared in '09. Another said they were denied adoption after their partner retired. No explanation. Just not eligible. He paused. "It's the same story, over and over." He looked down at me. "You're not alone, Rex." And neither were they. That evening, we walked slowly down the block. My steps were shaky, but I made it. Neighbors we'd never spoken to before came out. One woman knelt and gently kissed the top of my head. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving her." I didn't know what to say. I just leaned into her hand. Sometimes that's enough. Later that night, Cole stood in front of the wall we'd turned into a patchwork of photos and papers. He added one more. A screenshot of the viral video, frozen on the moment I pushed the girl from danger. Below it, he pinned the metal tag. Asset 492NX, it still said. But now, beside it, he wrote something in black marker. Rex, K9 partner, hero, survivor. I watched him from my bed, the bear tucked under my paw, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt seen. The morning after the story went national, our apartment changed. It wasn't the furniture or the lighting or the way the wind moved through the curtains. No, it was in the way Cole walked slower between the rooms. The way he stared at his phone longer, the way Jenna paused before she spoke, like she was measuring each word to see if it could carry the weight of what was coming. I didn't understand the news like people do, but I understood the hum, the voices from the screen, the rhythm of attention. It had a frequency, a pulse, and suddenly it was all around us. The headline stayed the same across every outlet. Hero dog saves child. Turns out he's a forgotten war K9. They showed my picture, me lying in the street, eyes open, tail still. They showed Cole, too, crouched beside me, mouth open in panic. And they showed the girl, Emily, wrapped in her mother's arms, safe. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was a symbol. Jenna brought over printouts of online reactions, letters, petitions, a message from a congressman's assistant, an offer from a national morning show, animal rights groups, veterans organizations. Even kids from an elementary school who had drawn pictures of me wearing a cape. One little boy wrote, "Dear dog, I wish you were my brother." Cole read it out loud, then just sat there for a while, rubbing the back of his neck with one hand, the page still trembling in the other. I rested my head on his foot. He looked down. "You didn't ask for this, did you?" I didn't. All I ever asked for was to be near him, to protect him, to go home. That night, Jenna stayed late. She brought Chinese takeout and something more, something quiet and sharp in her eyes. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. "Something I didn't put in the story." Cole looked up. "What is it?" She opened her laptop and pulled up a screen. It was a photo, a warehouse, rows and rows of crates, wooden, numbered, some marked with bright orange tape, and in one corner, a single crate with mesh sides and a dog inside. Not me. Another, like me. "This was leaked by a former contractor," she said. "A warehouse used by a third-party logistics firm that partnered with Nova Shield. They called it temporary storage for reassignment assets. But what it really was a dumping ground." Cole's jaw tightened. "How many?" "We don't know," she said. "The documents aren't public. But some of the crates were labeled with tags, just like Rex's, NX series, asset designations, no names, no medical records." "They tagged them like broken tools," Cole muttered. Jenna nodded. "And then, in some cases, they just disappeared." The air went still in the room. Cole stood slowly, walked to the wall, and stared at the growing web of evidence. The timeline, the photos, the tag, the map Jenna had drawn with pins and strings. "This doesn't end with Rex," he said. "This is bigger than him. Bigger than me." Jenna nodded. "That's why people are listening now. Because Rex isn't just a dog. He's proof." He turned to me. "You ready to help tell that story?" I didn't wag. I didn't move. But I looked him dead in the eye, and he knew. The next few days were a blur. The interview requests came fast. Cole said no to most of them, but he agreed to one. A live segment on the local evening news, filmed in our apartment. He made Jenna promise there would be no flash photography, no crowd, no dramatics, just facts. The reporter was polite, middle-aged, and wore a navy blazer, 2 sizes too big. He asked good questions. Let Cole talk. I lay on the rug in the background, half asleep but listening. Cole talked about my service, about Kandahar, about the scar on my side, the one that still itched when the weather changed. He told them about how I dragged him out of a blast zone, how I licked his face to keep him conscious, how I stood between him and death more times than he could count. Then he told them the rest. How I'd vanished. How Nova Shield denied him. How I'd ended up behind a diner, eating cardboard and curled beside a man with nothing but a coat and a broken heart. When the segment aired, Cole didn't watch it. I did, sort of. The TV flickered softly in the corner while he sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. Jenna sat across from him, quiet. "I think it's time," she said. "We take it to Washington." Cole didn't answer at first, just stared at the wall. "They'll ignore it," he said. "Maybe. But not if you stand in front of them with Rex at your side. Not now. Not after the world's watching." He nodded, slowly. That night, the doorbell rang. We weren't expecting anyone. Cole opened the door cautiously. It was Earl. He held a folded blanket in one hand and a battered thermos in the other. "I saw you on TV," he said. "Didn't think I'd ever see his face on a screen." Cole stepped aside. "Come in." Earl didn't sit right away. He came over to me and knelt down, slow, like his knees didn't work the way they used to. He laid the blanket beside me. It smelled like smoke and nights under bridges. "I kept this," he said softly. "Thought maybe he'd want it back." Cole stepped forward, quiet. "Thank you." Earl patted my head gently. "He's still the same, isn't he? Still listening." He never stopped. Earl stood, finally sat down on the edge of the couch. "You know what hurts most?" he said. It's not that they left him behind, it's that they thought no one would notice. They were wrong, Cole said. Jenna leaned forward. You helped keep him alive. Earl shrugged. He helped keep me human. The room stayed still for a long time. Then Jenna said, We're going to D.C. Congressional hearing. A committee's agreed to listen. Earl looked over. They really gonna listen to a dog? Cole smiled, just a little. No. But they'll listen to what he represents. Jenna pulled out her phone and showed him the numbers. 10 million views, hundreds of thousands of comments, donations, petitions, rescues flooded with volunteers, former handlers reaching out with names, photos, stories of their own missing dogs. Earl leaned back, his face unreadable. Well, he said, damn. The next morning, Cole packed a bag. Not with much. A clean shirt, copies of Rex's service records, the metal tag, a photo of me before the gray fur, when I still looked like a soldier and not a survivor. He clipped my collar gently, kneeling beside me. We're going to speak for the ones who never got this chance. I licked his hand. Jenna waited downstairs with the truck running. The drive to the airport was quiet, not somber, just focused. Before we boarded, Cole crouched in the terminal and looked me in the eye. They might not want to hear this story, Rex, but they need to. And we're going to make sure they can't forget again. I sat tall, ignoring the ache in my legs. I didn't understand politics, but I knew how to show up when it mattered. That had always been my job, and I'd do it one last time. Washington didn't smell like the places I knew. There was no dust here, no cracked sidewalks or alleys full of sleeping breath. The air had a strange kind of polish to it, like everything had been wiped clean too many times. The people walked fast, like they were chasing something or running from it. I watched them through the hotel window, wondering how many of them had once saluted someone like me, then forgot we ever wore the same dust. Cole didn't sleep much our first night in town. He paced. He reread the statement he'd written for the hearing. He stared out the window, his thumb rubbing the corner of the metal tag until his skin turned red. You okay? Jenna had asked before heading to her own room. He'd nodded, but not with his eyes. They were somewhere else. Back in a tent in Kandahar, maybe, or the morning he signed the form that let them take me away. I lay at the foot of his bed. I hadn't moved much since the flight. My legs ached, and the cold from the plane still lingered in my joints. But I watched him, every minute. If he was going to stand up and fight for me, I'd be awake for it. The morning of the hearing, Cole shaved carefully, pulled on the dress shirt I hadn't seen since his last funeral, and knelt down beside me. You ready, old man? I blinked once. He clipped my collar on slow, like it was a medal. We arrived at the Capitol building under a cloudy sky, the kind of gray that makes the air feel heavy, like it's carrying memories. Jenna led the way, carrying a folder thicker than a phone book. Inside it were statements, photos, timelines and names. So many names. We passed security, cameras, marble walls. The hallway echoed under our steps. When we entered the room, it was already half full. Men and women in suits, a few with uniforms pinned with medals, others with pens poised over notepads. Cole sat near the front. I laid down beside his feet. A photo of me was placed on the long desk in front of the committee. Not one of me in the street or on the operating table. This one was old. Me and Cole standing in the field, vest strapped tight, ears up, his hand resting gently on my back. I remember that day, the first time someone said I looked like a soldier. When the session began, they called witnesses first. A representative from Nova Shield gave a rehearsed speech about logistical challenges and procedural oversight. Jenna leaned over and whispered, "She's been trained to sound like she's saying something when she isn't." Cole didn't respond. His hands were steady on his lap, but I felt his knee bouncing just slightly. Then they called him. "Sergeant Cole Bennett." He stood, walked to the podium. He didn't clear his throat, didn't look down at notes. He looked them all in the eye. "My name is Cole Bennett. I served 2 tours overseas. My partner was a German Shepherd named Rex, K9 Unit. Mine detection and perimeter sweep. He saved my life more than once." And then he disappeared. He paused. When I got back, I filed to adopt him. They told me he was transferred to a retirement facility. I believed them. I signed the release. That was my mistake. The room was silent. I didn't know that Rex had been classified as non-recoverable, that his name had been replaced with a serial number, that he'd be dumped like surplus equipment. He held up the tag. "This is what was left of him." I watched his hand tremble for the first time. He didn't die in war. He died slowly, on the streets of Havenport, starving, forgotten. And when I found him again, I didn't recognize him. Not at first. Another pause. And he still protected someone. Even after all of that, he looked down at me. I lifted my head. They saw that. They saw us. He's not just a dog. He's a soldier. And there are more like him. Dogs who were trained to give everything, and then abandoned when they had nothing left to give. He set the tag gently on the desk. "I'm asking you to change that." When he returned to his seat, he didn't speak. He just reached down and touched my neck. I pressed into his hand. The rest of the hearing passed in a blur of words. Officials asked questions. Some looked defensive, others ashamed. But one thing was clear. They couldn't look away anymore. After it ended, people came to us. Veterans, reporters, a senator who knelt and patted my side with a hand that smelled like old papers and worry. "You did good," she said to Cole. "You both did." Outside, Jenna stood with her phone buzzing non-stop. She'd filmed everything. The clip had already gone live. 2 million views and climbing, she said. "This is the moment, Cole. This is the turn." We returned to the hotel late. Cole sat on the edge of the bed, pulled his boots off slowly, and exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for years. "You were perfect," he said. I laid my head on his foot. Later that night, when the street outside was quiet and the city had gone still, someone slid a note under our door. No envelope. Just a piece of black cardstock with white lettering. "Stop digging, for his sake." Cole stared at it. Then he showed it to Jenna. She read it, then set it down gently on the desk. "They're not just avoiding exposure," she said. "They're scared." Cole's voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. It was flat. Cold. "Good." He turned to me. I looked back. I wasn't afraid. I'd already been left behind once. This time, I was staying until the truth came out, no matter what they tried to bury with it. After the note came under the door, the world didn't stop turning, but something shifted in the way Cole looked at the hallway when we left the room. In the way Jenna checked her mirrors twice instead of once. In the way the air seemed tighter, like a lid had been pulled down over the city, and everyone inside it knew they were breathing borrowed time. Cole didn't show it much, but I could feel it in him. I always could. That quiet coil in his chest, winding tighter with every silence too long, every shadow that passed too close to our hotel door. I didn't sleep much that night. Neither did he. The next morning, he fed me slow and careful, his hands steady but eyes somewhere else. As I ate, he sat beside me on the floor and ran his fingers down my side, over each scar, like he was remembering where they came from. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I remember every one of those wounds, because I earned them for him. Jenna came by around 9 with coffee and a manila folder under her arm. She didn't speak right away, just looked at Cole and set the folder on the table. "What's that?" he asked. "Proof," she said. "The kind they can't walk away from anymore." He opened the folder and spread its contents across the table. There were photos, emails, redacted forms, with enough visible text to send chills up your spine. A log marked Asset Disposal, with dozens of entries labeled NX, some with serials, some with vague descriptions. Black GSD, approx. 9 years, behaviorally unstable. All without names. They never called us by name, I thought. Only numbers, only designations. Jenna pointed to one of the forms. "Look at the code, 729 NX. That dog went missing 6 years ago. Handler submitted adoption request. Denied. No follow-up. Just like Rex." Cole nodded. "And these? They came from an inside contact. Someone who used to work logistics. He wants to talk." "When?" "Tonight." Quiet place. He's scared, but he's ready. Cole looked down at me, then back at her. We go. That evening, we met the man in a small cafe on the edge of the city. The kind where the lights are always a little too dim, and the coffee tastes like it's been sitting since morning. He wore a ball cap pulled low, and sunglasses, even though the sun had already dipped behind the rooftops. He introduced himself only as Luis. When he saw me, he froze. That's him, huh?" Cole nodded. "This is Rex." Luis swallowed hard. I processed his number. He sat down and pulled a flash drive from his pocket. Jenna took it, her hands gentle, like it might break just from the weight of its truth. "I can't give you everything," Luis said, "but that's enough. Enough to prove they knew what they were doing." Cole's voice was low. What were they doing? Luis didn't blink. They were erasing them. He looked at me, then at his hands. "I used to think I was just pushing papers. You know. Logistics, dogs came in, got tagged, got sorted. Some went out for retraining, some got adopted. But others, we didn't even log them out. No paperwork, no transport records. One day they were in the kennel, the next day empty." Jenna leaned forward. "Where did they go?" Luis shook his head. "No one said it, but we all knew. Some were put down, others maybe dumped. Cheaper than medical care, less hassle than rehoming." Cole stared at him. His knuckles turned white on the edge of the table. "And the people who signed off on it?" Luis looked away. "Still working, still making money." Jenna closed her notebook. "You just gave us everything we need." Luis stood. "Just make it matter, okay?" We left without another word. Back at the hotel, Jenna backed up the drive. Cole paced. I lay in the corner near the door, eyes half open. The message had come in black cardstock, but this was written in blood. 2 days later, Cole and Jenna released the full story. It wasn't just a video now, it was an expose. They called it Justice for the Forgotten, the War Dogs Left Behind. In it, Cole spoke not to a camera, but to a memory, to the ghost of every canine who'd ever waited at the end of a leash that never came back, to every soldier who had lost more than a partner, and to me. The footage was quiet, no music, no flashy editing, just the truth, a warehouse, a tag, a name that was once mine. It hit the internet like a match to dry brush. Within hours, the response flooded in. Former handlers, rescue groups, reporters, senators, even civilians, people who'd never touched a uniform in their life, wrote in with tears in their words and outrage in their hearts. I had no idea. This has to change. Not again, not ever. And among them, one message stood out, from Emily's mother. She wrote, "My daughter is alive because of Rex. Whatever else he suffered, he still chose to protect. That's not just instinct, that's character." And that deserves to be remembered. Jenna printed it out and taped it to the wall above Cole's growing web of evidence. Cole didn't cry, but I could feel it in his breath when he knelt beside me later that night. "You're waking them up," he whispered. "You're bringing them home." I laid my head against his leg. I didn't need words, because I had spent a lifetime speaking with silence. The next morning, someone knocked on the door. It wasn't a threat this time. It was a man in uniform, army dress blues. He introduced himself as Captain Harris, representing the Department of Defense. "We've seen the reports," he said. "There's an internal investigation underway." Cole didn't invite him in. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Too late for some of them," he said, "but not for the ones still out there." Harris nodded. "That's why we're here." He handed over a letter. Official. Sealed. Inside, a formal invitation to testify before a congressional subcommittee on the ethical treatment and retirement of military working dogs. Jenna read it twice. "They're scared," she said, "and they should be." That evening, Cole sat beside me on the couch and held the tag one last time. He turned it over, brushed his thumb across the numbers. Then he placed it in a shadow box, alongside a photo of us from the field and the small stuffed bear Emily had given me. He hung it on the wall, no plaque, no fanfare, just the things that told the story best. When the sun went down, he didn't close the blinds. He sat with me as the light faded, and the room turned gold, then blue, then black. "You were supposed to fade," he said softly, "but instead, you became the thing they couldn't ignore." I let my eyes close, not because I was tired, but because I finally believed him. Justice was coming, not for me alone, but in my name. And in the names they never bothered to write down. They say you can tell when a storm is coming by the way animals behave. Birds fly lower, squirrels vanish, dogs stop barking, and just listen. I've always known storms, not by the sky, but by the weight in the air. And on that morning, I felt one inside me. Cole placed the bowl down, just like every morning. Same corner of the kitchen, same soft voice. "Breakfast, buddy." But this time I didn't rise. I watched him instead, trying to will my legs to obey me. But they stayed heavy, limp. My breath was shallow, like it had to climb uphill just to make it out of my chest. He noticed fast. He always did. "Rex," he called, gentle but tight. I blinked slowly. My ears moved, but the rest of me didn't. He crouched beside me, hand brushing through my fur. I tried to lift my head, to tell him I was still here, but the strength wasn't there. When my body shifted and I collapsed sideways, he caught me before I hit the floor. His voice shook. "Okay, easy. I got you. He wrapped me in a blanket and carried me to the car like I weighed nothing. His arms held steady, but I could feel the tension in him, every muscle tight, every heartbeat loud. Jenna met us at the clinic. She didn't ask questions. She just opened the door and helped Cole inside, where the air was thick with antiseptic and the memory of hard news. Dr. Alvarez was waiting. She didn't say hello. She just motioned to the table. "Put him down here." Cole hesitated. "He doesn't like metal tables." "I'll pad it," she said, already pulling a fleece-lined mat from the cupboard. He placed me down gently, one hand still on my side. My eyes found his. "I'm still here," I tried to say. "Don't look away yet." Alvarez examined me fast but gentle, her hands moving with the kind of experience that's not learned from books, but from loss. She stepped back. Her face didn't change, but her silence did. Cole stood straighter. "Don't sugarcoat it." She didn't. "His heart's failing," she said. "The damage from the accident accelerated it. But the real culprit is time, old injuries, long years untreated. He's tired, Cole. Too tired." He swallowed. "Is he in pain?" "No," she said softly. "Not yet. But he's close." Jenna stepped out of the room. I could hear her voice cracking outside the door. Cole sat down beside the table, one hand still resting on my chest. "I'm here," he said again, and he stayed. For hours. I drifted in and out, the world soft and far away. But every time I opened my eyes, his face was there, sometimes blurry, sometimes lit from behind by the setting sun through the window, but always there. At one point, I felt a towel being laid over me, a bottle of water pressed to my lips. It was Jenna. She didn't speak. She just knelt beside Cole and wiped the corners of his eyes when he couldn't do it himself. That night, the room dimmed into shadows. The machines hummed softly. Cole whispered stories. He told me about the time we got caught in a dust storm, and I curled around him so tight that he could still breathe. He told me about the first time I barked at the base commander and nearly got both of us kicked off the field. He told me I was stubborn, loyal, impossible, and loved. I felt his hand slide along my neck, slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat that had nowhere else to go. "You've carried me for years," he said. "Now let me carry you the rest of the way." The next morning, Dr. Alvarez gave him a choice. He didn't make it right away. He walked outside with me wrapped in that old fleece blanket, sat beneath a tree near the edge of the clinic lot. Birds called from somewhere above. The wind moved the leaves like whispers. He held me like I was new again, like I still had muscle beneath the fur, fire behind the eyes. I gave him one slow blink, and in that moment, we both knew. It wasn't the end of everything. It was just the end of this chapter. That afternoon, he signed the release. Not the kind he'd signed all those years ago, when they took me away. This one he signed with love, with permission, with peace. He stayed in the room with me, hand never leaving mine. "Doctor." Alvarez dimmed the lights. Jenna placed the stuffed bear beside my head, the same one Emily had given me after I saved her. I felt the needle. Cold, brief, then warmth, spreading like sunlight through water. Cole's voice was the last sound I heard. "You did more than serve, Rex. You taught me what loyalty looks like." And then the world went soft. Not dark, not gone, just quiet. Like the end of a mission, like a job well done. I don't remember what came after the final breath. Not right away, There wasn't some bright tunnel or echo of barking in the clouds, just a stillness, a warmth maybe, like laying in the sun after a long winter. A sense that I wasn't being pulled anymore, that for once I could just be. But I remember the sounds after, the way Cole stayed in the room, holding my paw long after the machines had gone silent, the way Jenna whispered something and left the room with her hand over her mouth, the way Dr. Alvarez closed her eyes and touched the top of my head as if she were saying goodbye to a fellow veteran. I didn't see the sun set that day, but I felt it even from wherever I'd gone. The days that followed weren't mine to live, but somehow they were still mine to witness. Jenna said the obituary she wrote for me broke every record on the site. People didn't just read it, they printed it out, framed it, read it to their children. Cole didn't say much, but he started answering every letter, every single one. There were thousands, from soldiers, from kids, from women who had never held a rifle, and men who hadn't cried in 40 years. They sent photos of their own dogs, tags, old vests, drawings. One boy sent a handwritten note that simply said, "If I'm ever in trouble, I hope someone like Rex finds me." Jenna gathered all of it into a binder. She called it What Loyalty Built. Then, one crisp morning, Cole received a phone call. The mayor, the Parks Department, a new non-profit called Heroes with Paws. They wanted to hold a ceremony. Cole didn't speak for a long time after the call. He just sat on the floor of the apartment, my collar still in his lap. I think part of him didn't believe I was gone yet, and truthfully, neither did I. The ceremony happened a few weeks later, on the first clear Saturday of fall. They held it in Havenport's Central Park, the same one where Cole first saw me again, where I'd laid beside Earl, ribs showing, soul flickering. Now it was filled with people, cameras, flags, kids holding signs, and at the center, a bronze statue. Me, or something like me. Standing tall, head lifted, not barking, not growling, just watching, the way I used to when Cole would walk away from me and I was told to wait, still, ready. Beneath my paws, carved in bold letters, were words I couldn't read when I lived, but understood now. To those who served without question, stood without fear, and loved without condition. They called it the Guardian's Monument. Cole stood next to the statue as the crowd hushed. He wore his uniform, the old one, and held a folded flag in one hand, my tag in the other. He didn't speak from notes. He never needed them. "I once thought loyalty was something you earned," he said. "Then I met Rex." He looked up at the statue. I saw his throat move as he swallowed something deep. He didn't ask for medals or ceremonies. He didn't even ask for a home. He just stayed. Through everything. Through war. Through silence. Through being forgotten. He paused. But he didn't stay forgotten. Behind him, Jenna wiped her eyes. Earl stood by the front row, hands clasped behind his back, like he was at attention, even in that old coat. Rex reminded us that the smallest acts of loyalty can make the biggest changes, Cole continued. And today, because of him, we have a chance to remember, not just one dog, but every dog like him, every soul we left behind. He reached into his pocket and placed my tag into a small box at the statue's base. "There'll never be numbers again," he said. The crowd stood in silence for a long time. Then, a small girl, Emily, walked forward, carrying the same stuffed bear she had placed beside me in the street that day. She looked up at the statue, then at Cole, and handed him the bear. For him, she said, "so he doesn't feel alone up there." Cole knelt, took the bear, whispered something into her ear. She smiled, and for a moment, the whole park breathed together. No one spoke. No one moved. Because the statue wasn't just a thing to look at. It was a promise. And I felt it, even from where I was, that I hadn't just left. I had arrived. Later that night, Cole stood beneath the stars with Jenna and Earl and a few of the veterans who had shared their stories after mine. They didn't talk much. Sometimes grief doesn't need words. Sometimes love is quiet. But as they stood there, I felt Cole's voice drift through the air. Soft. Final. But never finished. "You're not gone, Rex," he said. "You're part of us now. Part of everyone who ever loved, without asking why." I watched him from the hill where the wind blew through the branches and the statue stood watch over the city. And I knew then, more than I ever had when I was alive. I hadn't been forgotten. I had become memory, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that stands, the kind that waits. After the ceremony, things didn't go back to normal, because there was no normal to go back to. Not after that kind of goodbye. Not after the world finally heard what so many of us had carried in silence. They passed the law 2 weeks later. Jenna read it aloud in Cole's kitchen, her voice steady, but softer than usual. "The Canine Dignity and Protection Act," she said. "Mandatory medical care after retirement. First right of adoption goes to the handler. No more undocumented transfers. No more liquidation of non-recoverable assets. Full federal oversight on private contractors." Cole stood by the window while she spoke, arms crossed, one hand gripping my old leash like it still had warmth in it. He didn't say anything for a while. Then, with a voice that sounded worn through but clear, he said, "That should have always been the law." Jenna nodded. "But now it is. Because of Rex." It felt strange, hearing my name like that. Not as a command, not as a call, but as a reason, as a legacy. Word spread fast. Memorials popped up in other cities. Not statues necessarily, but gatherings. Candlelight vigils. Veterans bringing their old service dogs, some still alive, some just photos. Families pinning tags to corkboards. Children writing thank you cards to dogs they'd never met. In Phoenix, a shelter renamed itself Shadow's Place, after Jason's dog. In New York, a little girl raised money with lemonade stands to help fund surgeries for retired canines. And in Havenport, the park changed. The statue was never alone. People came every day. Some just to look, others to cry. A few to leave something behind. Collars, letters, chewed up tennis balls. And always, always, flowers. Cole visited often, never announcing himself. He just stood quietly at the edge of the grass, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes on the bronze me. Sometimes he brought company. Earl came once, wearing a cleaner coat than usual and holding a thermos that no longer smelled like whiskey. He stood next to Cole, the two of them not saying much. After a while, Earl pulled something from his pocket. It was the old leash, the one he'd made from that hoodie string. He laid it gently on the pedestal, then stepped back, shoulders stiff like he was saluting someone. "He followed me when I had no one," he said. "He kept me alive when I didn't want to be." Cole nodded. "He did the same for me." They didn't need more words. Some truths don't need repeating. They just need witnessing. Months passed, and life moved forward. as it always does. Jenna's story won awards, though she never kept them. She gave one to the vet clinic, where it sat on the shelf next to a framed photo of me wrapped in that old blanket, eyes half closed, still guarding even in rest. She gave the other to Cole. He didn't put it on display. He kept it in a drawer. What he did hang on the wall, right above his desk, was something smaller, a child's drawing. It was crooked, and the crayon lines were too thick, but you could still see what it was trying to be. A man and his dog, standing in front of a sunlit hill, with the words scrawled beneath. "Thank you for protecting us. You're a superhero." The signature in the corner said, "Emily." Cole smiled every time he looked at it. He still walked by the statue each morning, his steps slower, his back not quite as straight. But he never missed a day, not when it rained, not when it snowed. And every so often, he brought someone new, a friend, a student, once a young soldier who had just gotten home and didn't know what to do with the quiet. Cole would point at the statue and say, "That's Rex. He never quit on me." I never did. Even now, I don't. Because loyalty, real loyalty, doesn't end when breath does. It lingers. It stays in the corners of rooms, in the weight of an old collar, in the feel of a hand reaching out in the dark. It lives in the stories told at kitchen tables and bar stools and quiet parks when no one's recording and the only audience is the past. I see it all now, from somewhere not far, but just out of sight. I see Cole walking under the oaks. I see Jenna shaking hands with another handler, pressing a folder into their palm with quiet urgency. I see Earl passing out sandwiches near the bridge, still muttering stories, still mentioning my name like a secret prayer. And I see children pointing at the statue and asking, "Who was he?" And the answer, always soft but sure, comes from someone nearby. He was a good dog. But I was more than that. I was a partner, a soldier, a friend. And though I no longer walk among them, I walk with them, in the wind, in the stillness, in the kind of love that never asks to be remembered, but always is. Because some lights don't burn out. They just settle into the sky and shine. If you've ever felt forgotten, or waited for someone who never came back, just type 1 in the comments. That's all. I'll know what you mean. And if you stayed with me through the end, thank you. You didn't have to, but you did. And that means more than I can ever say. You can tap that subscribe button if you want to hear more. There are still stories worth telling, about loyalty, about love, about what it means to stay, even when no one's looking. I'll be right here waiting, just like I always have.